guys, BBI here. I want to stop and say thanks for tuning in and checking out whatever the video is about that's about ready to come up next. If you could take a minute and hit subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you enjoy what you've seen here, make sure to hit the like button. We'd greatly appreciate your support. Anyhow, guys, all that aside, let's get on with the show. Okay, let's start over here. These showed up today, and I've just got to get them turned around and back out of here because they take up a lot of space, and I am literally like out of room. This is an Xforce, supposedly 300 amp power supply. For you guys that don't know how this works, just because you got 10 of these modules strapped inside of a unit doesn't mean that you have 10 volts or 300 amps. You have 300 amps at 12 volts. So the higher you go in voltage, the less amperage that these units can produce. You have to sacrifice. You give one to make the other. And the drop off is fairly steep. So at 15 volts or 16 volts, this thing is going to be able to produce maybe like 250 amps at the most. Basic math, basic adding and subtraction, basic. Okay, so if you crank the volts up to like 16, 17 volts, to get to 16, 17 volts, you're back all the way like 230 amps. Okay, you sacrificed a great deal of amperage for a few volts. That's how it works. So there is a contactor underneath here, and the way this is set up is that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's like 7 modules on the bottom and 3 up here on the top. These are 30 amp, about $18 a piece switch modules. Okay, down here is a voltmeter. We can see it's reading about 12 volts. Guess what? It's putting out about 12 volts as well. This is a battery testing load cell. This is what we're going to run this thing up on. Now I got to remember that this is an intermediate supply, so I can't put a full load on it. This is going to be loud. There's going to be buzzing noises. This is our independent amp gauge. Amps, DC amps here in this window. DC volts, independent DC volts, and then our AC line current going in. Now, a 300 amp supply, me personally, I think should be on a little bit bigger than 312, but it is what it is since I've got 3 6 feeding it. So we got more than are capable that we're going to be able to pull to be able to supply this thing. So let's go ahead, let's try it at 12 volts. Zero amps being drawn right now. Okay, see if I can squeak my hands in here without blocking any of the. Here we go. 100, 200, 320 amp draw. So we'll bring it up to 300. We've dropped to 11.3, and our line voltage has fallen down internally. So we're holding 305 amps worth of draw. Go and back that off, and we're going to let our carbon load cell back off and cool down. So we know that it can produce 300 amps at 12 volts. There was no doubt about that. Let's go up to 14.5. Now there are a small couple things inside that I'm going to change. Like there's some wires that are just kind of, I don't know if they got electrical tape on them, and they should at least have a wire nut or heat shrink. I want to see if they're soldered. I'm assuming that they are. I'll show that to you here in a minute. So let's go ahead and let's duplicate that test. This is why I have a different voltmeter on here. And so I've got this external one. Alright, so here we go. 100, 200, 300. 400 amp draw. 370, we'll back this down to 300. Get our data point. 13.9, line voltage. Whew, that stinks. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's max this out. 15.6. Now we just pushed every single supply to like 120% by doing that test. And this carbon pack is starting to stink. Let's see if we can prevent having a fire, because there's only fiberglass in there. They don't let us have asbestos anymore. The leads that feed it are fiberglass covered, and the fiberglass will burn. Alright, so maxed out at 15.6. There's our 300 amp draw dropping down to 14.9. Up here in 20 amps, our line voltage, and let's max it out. 490 amp. Needless to say, the supply is good. Can it do it continuously? No. It cannot. But it tests. So we'll put a 200 amp load on it. So we're losing like half a volt. What I'm wanting to do is get the switch modules hot enough that they turn on to see if the little cooling fan's even working on. That's impressive to me. So go ahead and back that down. Let's see, did any of the internal fans kick on any of these units? Nope. Now I'm over here looking for heat. So I'm over here and I'm looking at the terminals in the back of the power supply. They are a little scooching warm. Just a little scooching warm. Alright, let me put all this away here real quick. I'm just going to slide it to the side because I got another one I got to do. And I want to show you what I was talking about underneath. This is what I'm interested in. I think it has something to do with the voltage control unit here. But this marks a huge improvement from these guys to actually see big enough wire from each one of the supplies to theoretically carry enough load down here to the terminals. But the terminals are 70, 80, 90, that's on ground. The hot side out here on the lug was 100 and something degrees right after the test. So amount of surface area for 300 amps isn't here, but internal guts can hold it. Now, we did pound that thing pretty good, and we put about a 400 and some plus amp surge load on it. Let's take a look at what this is. Why couldn't they use heat shrink? Oh, there's a disc capacitor in there and all kinds of stuff. Well, I'm impressed it did what it did, to be honest with you. See, they could have... See that? Little tantalum and a disc capacitor for noise for the voltage reference. Well, let's go over here. Grab that piece of heat shrink. Let's grab some scissors. Let's do that. Cut this in half. Okay. I can remember a time when I took a bunch of heat from certain people that they said that this was completely unnecessary when I built a 300 amp supply way back when. Big long threads about how it was inappropriate and the switch could easily do the work and blah 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 blah. I remember that. I remember reading all that going, what, are you guys crazy? And now we fast forward about 5 years later, and there's no more series of switches across the front of anything. There's a contactor. It's kind of makes you feel a little bit redeemed, I guess, inside if I was into having emotions like that, but really not. I feel better about that now. They could have heat shrink this as well. A whole lot of the little things they could have done, but for the most part, this thing is what it is. A bunch of slaved together 30 amp modules. But it did the job. It did the job. Now, the same guy that sent me this one sent me another one. So let me put this one back together and let's see what the other one looks like on the inside. We shall return. I'm putting this back together and I'm just standing here and looking at it. Looking at the backside. Nothing is labeled. In theory, this needs two 30 amp fuses. There are two in there, but how would a guy know that? Other than look at the fuse when it came out. Now what if he changes them because he doesn't have a 30 amp fuse? An AC 30 amp fuse, by the way. Not a DC 30 amp fuse. That's not what concerns me. Because we know that this power supply is going to be working right on the ragged edge of what it can do. We have a 120 millimeter fan pulling air through the cabinet. When the cabinet's all closed up, that's kind of neat. Down the middle of this thing, they've got some little air intake holes, so the air goes up between each one of the 7 supplies that are stacked this way, and then there's 3 across the top. So the air comes up through the floor. But that's our air intake. It'd be like trying to suck a golf ball through a garden hose. Interesting. Hey, baby. I was going to tell you, don't go to UPS today. I got it. I got to go over there. There's a package that's coming in that I got to turn around and send right back out. And two of the same style boxes. And so I got all the information here. It'd just be easier for me to go over and do it today. All right. Thanks, baby. Bye. I don't care what it takes. I've spent the last 2 days working on 2 other major projects that turned out to be sinkers. Because I'm like, I got to order tubes for one, and I got another one. There's something going on with it that I don't quite have my head wrapped around. So I've been waiting to have a quiet couple minutes where I could sit down and think about it. I've just been running, chasing my tail for the last week and a half. So anyhow, we're back on the power supply here. It's a day has gone by now. I called and I talked with the customer. He'd like me to label everything for him, and he also wants to make it so it's got appropriate airflow. Well, for me to have appropriate airflow, I thought that, well, I got to take the whole back of this thing off anyhow. I might as well get down in here and see what this gobbledygook is. Looks like he soldered these with a torch. Not bad. And they actually are V-block crimped. So these are soldered good connections. But I had to get rid of that gray electrical tape. I wanted to see what was going on underneath. So we're going to go back. We're going to heat shrink these, a 600 volt heat shrink. And then when I go to put the back on this thing, we'll put it all back together and it'll be done back correctly. I will say he had these on there tighter than bejeez. So give you a little close up here what's going on the bottom side. So these are soldered. I would have personally used a little bit heavier eyelet, something like, I don't know, something along this scale. To give you an idea how big that is, this is a 11/16 socket. Here's a 3/4 inch end wrench. I would have used something a little bit bigger, heavier duty like this, but being that these are full of lead, I'll let this pass for 300 amps. Intermediate, by the way, intermediate. So, alright, time to get out the hydraulic press, square up the hole for this side. I'm going to make it so one blows in, and this one's going to pull the air out. We're going to leave this naturally aspirated for this hole, because there's nothing underneath here that's going to create any heat other than the restriction of the terminals and maybe the contactor coil itself. But yeah, here I want to show you this. This was their idea of intake ventilation down here, and they'd space the power supplies out so the air would flow in between each one of the power supplies. You see how that's laid out? Here's your hole. Kind of makes sense. You can see the holes through there now. So that would work, but the air inlet is too small. And the way this thing is going to go, the guy's got stuff that goes on the side, the top, and the bottom. So I was thinking I'd punch a hole in the bottom of it, but then the little rubber feet are too short. I could change the rubber feet. Well, that'd be a whole lot easier and cleaner than punching another hole here. So push air in, have it draw air out. But then we're going to have all this restriction here versus just a naturally aspirated cabinet. Now I'm going to do the back wall. I'm going to do the back wall. We'll just let this be open air ventilation. That'll work. Good try though. It would have been better if they did 120 millimeter intake over here though, and made these holes bigger. But I'm just going to punch a 120 millimeter hole in here and put a fan guard on it, put a fan pulling air into the cabinet, and that's going to exhaust air out this way. Okay, away we go. Okay, so we went ahead and we labeled everything. Air intake, air outtake. Labeled the size of fuses, positive, negative, air vent, because that's really all this is at this point. I added this fan, and that's a little bit more CFM than this Evercool. I can't remember the name of this company. That's JVC. It's a JVC fan that I added. And it's got a little bit higher CFM than this fan, and what was going on was this was pushing more air in than what could come out the vent, or what could bypass this fan. It was making this high-pitched whining noises. The air was trying to bleed past the fan. So I added these two resistors in here to knock down the voltage that was hitting the fan. That and these things really don't lean themselves too well to being overvolted, and I mean past 15 volts, which this power supply can do. Let's see here. Let's turn it up on his side. So we came down here in the bottom, and we took all the electrical tape off everything, and we heat shrinked it. We went ahead and heat shrinked up your controls over here in the front end, just in case these wires ever get smacked. We don't have to worry about them touching and the voltage supply taking off on you. Now, I wanted to point this out to you. Remember, if you increase voltage, you're going to decrease the amount of amperage this power supply can put out. Now, honestly, this is about a 250 amp supply, even though we loaded it to more than that. And we put a ton more load on here than what this thing should be rated for. I would not count on this thing doing a true 300 amps all the time. It's like you might want to get on the old inner boob and buy a couple of these. They're 12 volt, 30 amp LED switch modules. You might want to have a couple extra of them laying around on hand, so just in case one of these pops, you can go in and change it out. Okay, and you'll see when you go to take this out that there's 2 wires that go in here, and you're going to have to cut a diode and attach a wire here, and then attach another one over here on the voltage drive. Okay, but if you want to go past 15 volts, you can adjust this potentiometer right here, and it'll change your top end voltage. We went ahead and changed one of the resistors on this meter and went ahead and changed out the capacitor that's in here to make sure it wouldn't float around on you. This is actually dead on the money now. So what this says is exactly what it does. So we repaired that, got this fixed up so it's electrically correct. I mean, technically it was somewhat electrically correct with the electrical tape. I was just impressed that it was actually, you know, actually V-blocked, crimped, and soldered. A big plus. So let's go ahead and set the camera down here for a second. Let me turn it so the front's facing us. This is your voltage adjust. It shows you which direction you need to turn it. Turning it to the right runs the voltage up, off, and on. Pretty straightforward. Voltage down, all the way down to 10 volts. Very smooth, stable. And the reason I had to add the capacitors is because this last digit would sit there and like, man, that would drive this guy nuts. So nice and smooth. All the way to 15.7. Just a hair underneath 16 volts. Just enough to give you a little bit extra kick, but not enough to get you in too much trouble. That makes sense? So let me put the lid on it, and I want to show you this thing running. Be right back. Okay, here's with it running. Like I said, this fan's pushing a little bit more air in than what can come out here, and that's why we went ahead and left this vent open, or otherwise I would have blocked this off. Remember how we were talking about the contactor gets warm, and I'm not too sure what kind of contactor it is. I did kind of look it up, look the part numbers up. It does say it's continuous, but we know that contactor, it's going to get hot and the coil being charged. Well, by us having those openings in between all the power supplies, a little bit of air is weeping through the cabinet, going across everything on the bottom, cooling the backside of the positive and negative terminals, and it's coming out this port down here. So we're going to leave that alone. But I mean, this thing is moving air. It's literally coming in as fast as it's going in. Or it's coming out as fast as it's going in, sorry. As much as I'm not trying to like blow smoke up your skirt or through your box, I'm blowing smoke in your box for visual representation, otherwise you'll have no clue what I'm talking about. So, this power supply is good. Let's go check out the other one. I'm going to take this one, put it in the house, because I'm out of room out here, I got no place to sit it. So let me go run this one in the house, we'll get you a shipping quote in the morning, this thing will be ready to come home to you tomorrow. I mean tomorrow early. So let me grab that other one, let's get started on it real quick. Well, this girl, at least it's got labels on it. This is a 100 amp supply. So, I'm kind of interested to see how they come out with a 100 amp supply. It should have 4 30 amp modules in it. Most likely got 3. I'm praying for 4. That means I don't have to add one. If not, I have to add one. Because if you think about it, 3 30 amp supplies is only 90 amps. Whoa. I'm going to commit the holy of unholies here. Whoop. Whoop. It's alright. I'll own these till the end of time anyhow. Oh, sweet. It's actually a 120 amp supply, you guys. It's got 4 switchers in it. Alright. Look at the little tiny Everflow. That's neato. Neat. Alright. Well, this would run so much better if it was on 220. And really all you'd have to do is change the plug Flip some switches on the inside. Oh. I don't see any problem with proceeding on to testing this. Let's get our little test rig set up. You guys will get a kick out of this. It's a repeat of last time. That's why we use heat shrink. It's okay, tape's just backing off. But I want to take these apart. I will take these apart and make sure that they're soldered. I'm sure that they are. Hope they are, anyhow. At least we got grommets. I had grommets on the other one, too. This isn't teabag. Isn't the greatest, but isn't teabag. Okay, let's set up our little test rig so we can meter everything. We'll be back. Okay, let's start here. This is pretty much the same rig as before. Got our analog scale and our digi scales. This is our AC voltage in, DC voltage out, DC amps, and also again DC amps. Now remember, we're only going to test this thing up to about 100 amps because if I push it, I could blow one of these supplies, and I'm really not wanting to create work for myself here, especially it being documented and all. So we're 100 amps, supposedly around 12 volts. Now this is the lowest. Absolutely the lowest that I can adjust this thing without, well, going in here and adjusting that potentiometer. So let's go ahead and see if it'll hold to the test. I'm sure it will. Let's go ahead and start bringing our load cell on. Our carbon pack resistor here. There's our 100 amps. 100 amps shown here. We've dropped down a full volt. Oh, chill out. Drop down a full volt and look at our line voltage. 100 amps, 150 amps, 130 amps. Let's go ahead and back this down. So go ahead and back this off. We don't want to end up chooching the supply. So that held pretty well. It held pretty well. So we're showing DC volts 12.78, DC volts 12.7. So go ahead and run this up to 15.7. 15.78 again. So let's go ahead and let's load up our cell again. Amps, 14.93, 14.8 and dropping, 15.2. Line voltage is steady. Pulling 124 amps, which we can do because remember this is 4 30 amp modules in here. And now it's starting to fall off as everything's starting to get hot. Go and back this down. We're going to let the load cell cool off. And now while everything's hot, what we do is we're going to go look for heat. Let's grab our FLIR. Alright, each one of the modules is hot now. The wire leads coming out are not hot. Fuse holder is not hot. Now, let's very carefully pull this off. Pull this off. I wish you could smell everything. That carbon cell's hot. Just gonna tilt this up. Wow, that ground rail is hotter than shit. This one here is hot. Very hot. Okay, so we're going to go pull that ground lug off, and we're going to pull that positive lug off, make sure that's all soldered. But you got to remember, these were built back in 2000. late 2016, early 2017. So means there's a little bit better things going on. Anywho, without saying anything negative, walking away from that before I get myself in trouble. Let's get this mess off the workbench and let's see if we can clean up some of these connections a little bit. Well, we figured out why the ground was getting so hot. This one's got dribbles of solder on it at least. Well, it's partially soldered. Partially. This one, on the other hand, is not soldered for anything. That's why this one was getting so hot. It has slightly less electrical connection to it. So, I cannot do the dip on this. I can drill a hole and fill it. So, I think that's what I'm going to do. Yes, quit your bitching. I do have a drill index. Okay. Okay. Add a little bit of flux to the situation. Let's go grab some pixie lube here, magic pixie lube. Yeah, so drilling the hole does weaken the eyelet just a little bit, but I'll take that little bit of weakness over having a solid electrical bond throughout. Please note how long I'm letting the iron sit on there. What we're doing is we're really forcing the joints in between the copper to really get energetic and open up, and that way the lead tin mixture can flow into the joints and cause a good bond. Now the trick to this is letting it cool off slow, real slow. Otherwise you can end up having a brittle joint, and then you can rechange the temper of the copper. Even though getting it up to a couple hundred degrees does kind of work harden it. I don't know. This was a 250B cabinet originally. Both these cabinets were ICA manufacturers. Either that or the guys down the street were copying the other dudes. I don't know. I don't even pretend to understand how that works. Maybe one of them guys had a good deal on some cabinets and one dude slipped them over to the other, but this is a current ICA cabinet you can go get. And so is the other power supply. So now we got solder all the way through now. All the way around the joint. So to keep ourselves from messing up the jacket, we'll just go ahead and unpack that and just let it sit off to the side. This thing here, as we can clearly see, I guess was soldered. Let's zoom in here a little bit. A little dauble of love. Nothing on the backside. Nothing at all. So we'll do the same here. Okay, so we got a semi-solid electrical connection going on. Yeah, we'll do it from the front side. So there was this time I was watching BBI drill this thing on camera. He slipped and the bit went into his arm and he about bled to death. It was awesome. Did you see that video? Hey man, you never know around here. You should be afraid to turn away. I mean, God, on one video I freaking cut part of my finger completely off. You never know what's going to happen. Flux and solder are like water. They flow in, down, and through. So we're just letting that seep its way in around all the wires. You guys know me, if I screwed up that bad on camera, I would definitely let everybody watch. Just for the sheer entertainment value. I say, I'm an entertainment whore. I'm cool with it. There it goes. Now we drink it. Some things you want to heat up and get hot real fast. Sometimes you just want to let the heat flow into it, soak. Come on, drink. Drink it. There we go. Let's go ahead and do the back side. So you gotta be careful how far we get with this, because don't make it so hot that the insulation starts popping off the wires. That would be what we consider to be bad. There it goes. Now it's flowing. Not enough heat for the joint. There we go. All right. Oh, next step. See, here's the shit I never show on camera. Like, this is fine steel wool, right? Now I just sat there and I covered this whole eyelet in flux. Well, Flux is good and flux is bad. Flux can act as a conductor insulator, right? So we want to make sure our connections are clean. It's all these little details that bore the pants right off of people. See, now I got me a little burr going on there. See? And yeah, that flux might get crushed when we go and crimp down on it real hard with the... But I'd rather make sure the connection is clean. Yes, I know, file only cuts in one direction, even if it's cross-hatched. What? It's like, used to have this kid by the name of Jeff, or this guy by the name of Jeff. He was in his late 20s. When I was in my early or late teens, you know, back when I was still trying to figure out how to talk to girls and maybe get them convinced it's okay to let me touch their boobs. You know, so he'd already gone through that whole path. Well, this guy fancied himself a welder. Xforce, maybe. Stick welder. I did see him tub out a race car one time. It didn't turn out too hot. I don't even know if that car ever got finished. Anyhow, Jeff was Jeff, because his brother was Kevin. Anyhow, like Kevin, he was cool. Jeff, one time we were out working at his dad's shop, and his dad had like the NASCAR series toolbox, right? It was freaking huge. I mean, it was the kind of thing that had 19 shelves on it, right? And that was just to hold the TV and the lawn chair and the satellite dish and a cooler and the little kegerator that was slapped on the side. It was huge. I mean, the tires on this thing were like golf cart tires. I mean, big stuff, right? Craftsman. And when the plaque on the side, it says handmade for so-and-so, names are going to be omitted to protect the somewhat semi-innocent. Handcrafted for so-and-so. Anyhow, there was every Craftsman tool you could ever think of in this tool drawer, right? I mean, like, he even had Craftsman hammers and everything. They were out working on my buddy's suspension on his little pickup. So his toolbox is sitting there. And Jeff has got this end wrench in his hand. And he just goes to flailing on this tie rod steering end, right? Trying to get it to bust free, right? And I'll never forget, I'm sitting there and I'm watching this go down and I'm going, Jesus, that wrench was probably $150, $200 just for the one wrench, right? And he's just whanging on this thing. And, you know, remember, this is Jeff's dad's tools, not actually Jeff's tools. So I'm sure in Jeff's mind, he's like, nah, it's my dad. My dad's rich, he can handle it. But his dad steps out on the back porch and starts screaming at Jeff. It's not a goddamn hammer! Use the right damn tool for the job or you can't use... Right? Use the right tool for the job. Moral of the story. Wailing. Whang, whang, whang. Just chipping this tempered, beautiful wrench. Just chipping it. Like, sparks flying. It's like, damn, man. It's not a flippin' hammer. So I'm over here using... Really, it should be just... I know. I've been out here since 7 o'clock this morning. It's now 7 p.m. I've managed to rebuild one power supply, and I'm almost done with this one. I'm tired. I'm really ready to be done out here, so I'm sorry. If I wanted a sanding wheel, I've got those sitting over there. I know, I cheated. I got lazy. Or as like Jeff used to say, don't wake the baby. I still have no idea what he ever meant by that, but he said it all the flippin' time, and I had no clue what it meant. We just all kind of look at him like, Yeah, cool. All right, let's put this back together. About 5 miles an hour. So what does that translate into? A 4.6 knots. And the CFM reading, man, I don't. There's no way that's 590 CFM. There's no way. Maybe about 10. Anyhow, the point is, it's moving a bunch of air through here, that little tiny fan. It's relatively quiet. I think this guy's going to use this to run his radios and that kind of thing. Maybe a 2x4 or a 1x4. Power supply is overbuilt. It's 120 amps worth of supply, so I don't think I need to add more fans to it. I really don't. If you want me to, bud, I can come back out here and knock a hole in it. It's not a big deal. We'll throw another fan in it. And if it was me, I'd probably put a fan in the back and use this as a vent and use that as a vent. But you're just going to add more noise to the situation. And remember, each one of these little supplies has got their own little fan that is supposed to turn on, in theory. And the little switchers and the little MOSFETs inside of them get hot enough, there it'll flip on a little coupler and then it'll start mass circulating air inside. But you just got to change the volume of the air out inside the cabinet at a regular basis. A 300 amp supply, I know you're going to put a lot of pressure on it. That's the reason that I wanted to go and add another fan to it to give it a prayer of being able to live a little bit longer. This thing here, I think we're fine. The only thing I want to do is I want to add a label on here that says voltage adjust. So only print that, and your positive and negatives are labeled. A fuse holder's not labeled. I'll put a label on that for 15 amp. Okay, last step, and then we're done. Well, let me snap a photo here. We're done. Now, if it was me, I would have used one 100 amp mean well module, 15 volt, and three 100 amp continuous duty 15 volt mean well supplies. My very first 250B box I built from scratch was in this exact same cabinet. And now that I really know what I'm doing, I could fit the same thing inside this box here. But yeah, I built that for Tom. It's the one that's got the sticker up here. It says powered by alcohol. This is a neat use of these two cabinets. I would have never thought of using these two cabinets as power supply cabinets. One, because of their cost, and two, the real estate. But it worked. And these are going to work well. Now, if it was me, I would have gone and like soldered every one of the connections on each one of the supplies. But that is only going to let you pick up just a little tiny bit of amperage. The main things that we had to make sure was that the positive and negative wires were soldered, that the proper kind of airflow, that it's got the proper size wire feeding each one of the supplies. And by the way, make sure that you've got a decent 220 outlet for this to go to. I don't see us needing to do a whole lot more. There's a whole bunch of other fancy stuff we can do to this, like we can add we can add amp gauges to them and some other things, but it's really not necessary. That's flash, that's not functionality. So on that note, I think I'm going to wrap these up. I'm going to run them up in the house. I think we're going to call it. Gentlemen, my name is BBI. Xforce 300 amp, Xforce 100 amp power supplies, not continuous duty surge rated. If you like this little dog and pony show that I managed to put together for you, make sure to click subscribe. Make sure to click the notification button. That way you can follow along with all the crazy antics that take place over here. I'm going to go eat me some dinner. Then I'm going to sit out here and edit video for the next 2 hours. Guys, I got to get. I appreciate your all support. I've got so many projects, I don't know if I'll ever get caught up. I mean, like ever. Hopefully someday. But guys, I appreciate all your patience. One foot in front of the other, one transistor replaced at a time, one tube box repaired at a time, and let's keep burning them soldering irons to the ground, getting the job done. I appreciate you guys. From your biggest duck in Idaho, I'll see ya. Bump, bump. Gone.